Well, of course, the first thing was that they changed the story of that was in my book, Intruders. They changed it around, and so various characters, instead of my being a painter, I was turned into a psychiatrist in the film and so forth. But I think essentially they kept the truth of the abduction experience in a very accurate way. The emotion that the people felt and that they were experiencing was very, very accurately portrayed, and therefore the real center of the abduction phenomenon was made clear to people. It was very effective, I thought.
It was also a combination of main subjects pertaining to the UFO phenomenon, not only abductions anyway.
Yes. Well, the thing is that in my book, I didn't deal with crashed UFOs or the Roswell story or anything like that. Obviously, I'm trying to focus the book. But they wanted to bring in additional material, so there was much more about a kind of Roswell story and also much more about the government cover-up. I didn't really deal with those things in the book for obvious reasons. But I think, again, it suggested, it widened the story for the audience.
And in, that was 92. 92, okay. Just prior to that date, I have to recall the other program, TV program that was pretty successful in which you participated too, but from the ufological point of view was a mess. I'm talking about UFO Cover Up. What was the experience during...
with UFO, which one?
Cover Up Live.
Yes, right.
What do you think about that?
Well, that was, I think, a very unfortunate program. The first thing about it was that they tried to cover far too much, and they had everyone scripted. In other words, they interviewed each one of us, and then they took words that we had said and put them on a teleprompter and wanted us to repeat exactly word for word what we had said by reading what they had down as text. No one was skilled at reading teleprompters. So instead of an actual interview, such as we're doing now, spontaneously, it seemed very stilted because people were having to read their own words.
But for the first time, the program depicted the reconstructions of these abduction experiences by, if I don't recall badly, 3 or 4 different people.
Yes.
That you provide as examples or not?
Yes, I provided some of the people in this. This program was quite a while ago, and it was universally panned, I think, by people who took the subject seriously because of its very stiff, stilted quality. And we also were upset by the fact that what seemed to be disinformation was introduced in this sense that when the words were read about captured aliens in the Roswell crash and other crashes supposedly, they built up the evidence for that and then knocked it all down by saying that the aliens love to eat strawberry ice cream. It's almost as if you get the audience hooked into accepting this and then you chop it down by making it seem foolish. So there was a lot of suspicion about that particular aspect of the program.
In any case, what kind of reactions, as far as the abduction phenomenon, you got personally after the broadcast?
Well, after every broadcast I've done many others besides that one too. Many, many. You do get letters from people, and yet very often it's not immediate. Someone will, the more typical thing is someone will write me and say, last year I saw a program called UFO Cover Up. Ever since then I've been thinking about certain things that happened to me when I was a child. I finally decided to write you. I wrote you twice before, but I tore up the letters. This often happens. That people don't react immediately because I think to explore the idea that they may have had these experiences is such a disturbing idea to look into that you don't just jump into it. You don't just see a program and pick up the telephone the next day. People mull over it, consider it, and then finally reluctantly contact me. And the contacts, the letters and phone calls and so forth that I've been getting have never diminished. In other words, since, well, 1987, when Intruders was published, brought a huge number of letters in the next, ongoing years. But even still today, I would say that I receive every day, on the average, every day, 2 new cases that should be investigated. That's every day. And of course, not on the average. I mean, some days I'll get 7 cases that need to be investigated. Now, these are cases that come from Italy, come from South America, that come from Europe, that come from all over the United States. And so I try to refer people to investigators like yourself in other countries who can look into this. But the numbers are enormous, staggering.
I have so many questions that will take us maybe more than 30 minutes. In fact, let's start from the beginning. Without mentioning Barney Budd case, Leo Sprinkle got first probably in touch with a bunch of people who were eventually giving the impression that something fishy and wrong was going on already 20 years ago. Did you get in touch with Leo in order to understand what his previous activity was?
No. The sequence for me was this. I had no interest in the subject at all. I had a sighting of a UFO, daytime, 1964. I then read about it. When I read about the Hill case, I didn't believe it, because I couldn't believe it. Just couldn't believe it. Finally, I accepted it. That's 1967, say I accepted. I continued doing nothing, but from time to time reading it. 1975, I investigated my first case, which was a landing of a UFO with aliens getting out and digging samples, soil samples, in New Jersey. This is in the United States, roughly 1 mile from Broadway in Manhattan. It's right across the river. Now, in 1975, when I looked into that case, most investigators who had been looking at this for a long time only knew of a handful of abductions. We assumed that they were very rare. By 1975, there was the Hill case, Pascagoula in Mississippi, Travis Walton, Villas Boas, and a couple of others. In 1975 and 76, when I wrote an article about what had happened in this landing case, I started getting phone calls and letters. And some of these cases turned out to have missing time, a sense of suspicions that something more had happened, even though the people didn't remember an abduction per se. And I started looking into those cases, and what I discovered right off the bat was that there were many abductions, because these are people who hadn't remembered seeing a UFO. Now, mind you, in all those earlier cases, Betty Hill, Travis Walton, etc., everybody remembered seeing a UFO consciously. But I started finding cases where they didn't remember seeing a UFO. They didn't remember seeing aliens consciously. They just they had missing time, etc. So when I published my first book, which came out in '81, what I wrote about was the fact that, first of all, this might be an extremely widespread phenomenon. Up until that point, I think most investigators thought it was extremely rare, and that includes Leo Sprinkle and everyone else. Now, I said in 1981 at a conference that I believed it was highly possible that there were more abductions in the world than there had ever been UFO sightings. And that was a very radical thing to say, because there had been hundreds of thousands of sightings. And I was saying that the sightings were really an aspect of abductions rather than the other way around. That opened a huge door on the problem. I also discovered the issue of screen memories, and wrote about that in 1981, that a person might remember seeing several automobiles wrecked with their lights on. and feel very strange about it and miss some time. And under hypnosis, you found out there was no wrecked cars, that it was in fact a landed UFO, that images were being played into people's heads. I also discovered that there were scars, physical marks, which people didn't seem to know about before that. So there were a lot of aspects of the phenomenon that I discovered then, but as I say, centrally is the issue that this thing was extremely widespread.
Did you have chance to meet Alan Hynek and talk to him about it?
Alan Hynek and I got to be very good friends. And Alan was always disturbed by the idea of abductions. He didn't like to think that this was going on. And he would say to me, and I really, really was fond of this man. He was a wonderful man. He would say, "Damn it, Bud, you make such a strong case for this that it seems so persuasive, but I just can't accept it. I just can't imagine that this is going on." Even though he was willing to entertain the idea that it might. But he fought the idea of abductions till the end of his life. He just couldn't accept it, even though he admitted that the case was powerful.
Okay, but he invented the definition of close encounters, different kinds, including the third type.
Occupants, UFO occupants.
Perfect. But with the exception of the fourth kind, and eventually right now the fifth kind, with sexual intercourse. Now, I believe that in the last parts of his life, Hynek knew very, very much of the entire scenario of the UFO, including Roswell, including UFO crashes, including, that's my belief, my own belief, including the questioning of the cover-up. It's out of question, absolutely. And so I wonder what really was his attitude with the abductions. Could ever possibly be a sort of door closed because he didn't want to open it because it was too much for that time, but he knew that it was for real?
Well, my feeling was always that he knew in his heart of hearts that all of this was going on. This is a guess, I don't think the government took him inside and told him, yes, we have bodies, we have wreckage. I don't think he was ever told that. I think, knowing Alan, he would have made that public. He certainly would have told people who were very close to him. I don't think that the government ever took him into its confidence. I mean, the cover-up. I don't think he was included in the cover-up. I think that he knew that this was going on despite the fact that he didn't like it. He didn't want to deal with it. It was upsetting to him. I think that was emotional. It's upsetting to everybody. I mean, who wants to entertain the idea that, as has been said, that we're not necessarily the top of the food chain, that they are here and that they are doing what they want with us, and there's no real sense that we have any choice in the matter. I think Alan suspected that that was true.
Did you ever had the chance to talk to him about malevolent and benevolent humans?
I don't know that that ever came up in so many terms. You see, I personally don't see either malevolent or benevolent beings. I don't see either one. I see the UFO occupants as being, even when they're different types, say these tall insect-like creatures, the grays, figures that look more human. We have too many cases where they're all in the same ship cooperating on the same abduction procedures. And I see them here for their purposes, according to their agenda. I think they need things that we have. They need our DNA, our genetic makeup. I think they are fascinated by things that we have that they don't have, such as our love for our children. I think if their children have been artificially produced, in effect, in vitro, and they have not carried their babies within their own bodies for years, they may have no connection with the babies in an emotional way, the way we do, because the mother has carried the child. I think they are interested in that. I think that these are all things that we have which are, from a certain point of view, primitive to them, but still somehow filled with vitality. And I think that they want those things. So I think they're here for themselves, not for ourselves. I don't see them trying to hurt. I don't see them trying to help either.
Well, talking about different kinds of aliens, we have also to include non-aliens in a ship, where one abductee is brought against his own will, obviously, and then is subjected to certain experiments, blah, 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 blah. What happens is that, for instance, in some Italian cases that we thoroughly investigated, that there were also humans there.
Yes. I think that that's definitely the case, and I've certainly run into that myself. And this is what I think happens. The first situation is, if they can take a fetus from a woman, and that fetus is, let's say, a hybrid baby, it's been produced by their cells and our cells, what's to prevent them from taking a fully human fetus from a woman? I mean, a woman who is pregnant in the normal way, and they take the fetus, and therefore that fetus is brought to term in a UFO environment and is brought up totally within their culture, whatever one wants to call it. Therefore, when a person would be taken aboard a ship, they might see some totally 100% humans who have been with the UFO occupants their entire lives. That's certainly, I think there's evidence for that. So rather than these, I mean, if they can bring up tiny hybrid babies, they can perhaps also bring up 100% human babies in their environment. And that human then would have a completely alien point of view.
Or attitude. But I was pointing out the fact that we notice the presence of, let's say, controllers, outsiders. We're talking about humans like military person standing there. You do have the Nordic type, the small gray, the poor unfortunate abductee, and then there they are also two, I'm not talking about Men in Black, just
yes, sir.
Regular,
yes,
straight, very well dressed military person.
The issue is very complicated. Now, my feeling is, and one of the things I've written about in my new book, Witnessed, is that we have a number of cases, I have a number of cases now, which I call alien co-option. The aliens will simply abduct somebody or take them over, and that person is acting as if he or she is an alien for the next hour or two. And then that person is put back, and the person at that point is totally like a normal human being again. I give an example. A woman I've worked with remembered being in a ship, and she's an abductee, but she was in a ship now this other time, wearing a blue uniform like the aliens were wearing. She didn't know how she got into this uniform. Didn't have buttons or zippers. And she's told that she has to go out of the ship, which is on the ground, and there's an automobile that's stopped there. And she walks over to the automobile, and there is an African-American man in the car. His car has been stopped. He's scared to death. She goes over with two aliens, little grays. She opens the door. She takes him out. She takes him by the arm, and he just walks with her. She leads him into the ship, and that's her job. It's now over. She doesn't have to do that anymore, and the next thing, she's put back. But obviously the man has been reassured at the presence of seeing normal humans. I have this happening many times. Now, it would then seem that a policeman could be picked up, military people could be picked up and used in this way, and we would obey them because they look military. I have cases where a man, one particular case, a man sees a normal human in the ship wearing an army uniform with an armband that says MP, military police. And this man had been in the army himself, and he's thinking, what is this man doing? An MP, why would they have uniforms? You know, if the government is cooperating with the aliens, why would they have them dressed up in uniforms? I mean, which is just advertising. See, we're cooperating with the aliens. It's so obvious. And he says, this isn't making sense. And at that point, the figure changes. Now he's a Nazi uniform on. Army band, Nazi thing, a Nazi hat, and so forth. And he jumps and he thinks, you know, this is impossible too. But it's almost as if images are being put into his head. He doesn't know what exactly he's seeing there. So we have so many problems with this. I don't entertain the idea, I haven't seen evidence for it, that governments, whether it's the Italian, the American, or whatever, have military people who go up into UFOs and abduct people. I don't think that's going on. I think that people are being co-opted. Images are being played in. People are seeing things that aren't really there. I remember, as an example, a police officer who I worked with, and I remember under hypnosis. He's on the ship. He's scared to death. He's on his back, and he's naked. And a female comes out, and she's an alien, and she mounts him. He somehow has an erection, and he's looking at her, and she's terribly ugly, and he's absolutely terrified, and she's suddenly very beautiful. Very beautiful. And then all of a sudden his wife is standing next to him saying, that's all right, I want you to make love to her. Yes, make love to her. His wife is there. He looks back, and this figure is ugly again. He's terrified. She's suddenly beautiful, and his wife is there again reassuring him. Well, if they can do all of these things, and I think they can, it gets very hard to sort this out. And I fault the governments for, especially the American government, for the cover-up, which is it's a horrible thing they're doing to human beings. Because the government is officially saying to let's say it's a 7-year-old child who's been abducted and been frightened and maybe has been cut and various things have happened. The government is officially telling that child, that didn't happen to you. You're lying or you're mentally deranged. This is doing incredible harm. It's almost like the police telling a rape victim, you know, you weren't raped, you went out and wanted to have sex. It's doing incredible damage. So I blame the governments harshly, horribly, for the cover-up, because it's doing incredible harm to people. But I don't believe that we are putting soldiers aboard UFOs in some regular way. I just don't think that's happening. I think there are too many other possibilities.
Let's go back to the first impact between alien mothership, which decides to deploy some small objects. Mm-hmm. From these small objects, the Greys are arriving and pick up a certain subject. They use a technique that eventually Vallée didn't define as deception, according to this kind of phenomenon. But I think that it applies. Deception, they are real masters of deception.
Absolutely,
they
absolutely.
appear as you suppose to be framed in a certain frame of your life. Where are you fragile? Mentally fragile. Maybe because this accident happened to you in the past. Maybe because for this other reason. Because, and in this case, as Roberto Pinotti and many others believe, they act and interact with your mind in order to build images, ideas, virtual reality that allows them to get into yourself, and you are hopelessly, let's say, not strong anymore. Mm-hmm. You can fight them. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this?
No, I think that's true. I think that the idea of knowing what's in people's minds, I think they know that. And for instance, if they pick up a woman who is a very religious Christian, they may make her think they have come from God, that they are angels, so to speak, and they're using her belief system to get into her head to make it easier to control her by using her belief system. Now, one of the great cases was a man named Carl Higdon, who was abducted in, I forget what state, but in western United States in 1974. He was out hunting, and he was hunting elk. And he saw this elk, and he fired his gun, and the bullet just went out of the gun and dropped onto the ground. And he has the bullet. It's just like a pile of lead. And he couldn't figure out, and suddenly he's taken, he's paralyzed, and he's taken by an alien and into the ship. And at some point he's able to ask the alien why they're here. And this alien says, we're here to hunt and fish. Well, he's thinking this is crazy. You know, if they can get here from wherever and they have this equipment, why do they have to hunt? And he got the sense that they were using the fact that he was a hunter to get into his head, to make him more, you know, easy to control and talk to. Children will often be abducted by what they think of as Mickey Mouse or something like that, using that kind of imagery. So the idea that they take an area not just of vulnerability, but an area where our minds might easily accept something, they know how to go right into that and use it. I think people are abducted at all times. In other words, a person can be abducted right after they've had, let's say, supposing a person had an automobile accident and was injured. They might be abducted then because they're at a very low ebb. They might be at the peak of their strength. I mean, they could win a prize fight and be abducted that night too. They can take them whenever they want to, but the imagery that they can use, using images that are already in the person's head, I think that's an extremely typical way that they operate.
We do have a double trouble. In other words, the mental confrontation or the mental contact and the physical confrontation at the same time. Let's say that one person, one subject possibly is very skillful in both sides. Martial arts with, let's say, yoga practicing, or how do you say, meditation,
right,
and whatever. Very strong mentally and very strong and skillful physically. Do you think that that kind of subject is a better study subject for them, or a better specimen in order to produce something?
That's very hard to know. I don't know that I could answer that. I have many cases, which are very interesting to me this way, of people having abduction experiences at the time they're meditating. It's as if once they go inside and close off the outside world to meditate, it's almost as if they're vulnerable for control at that point. So sometimes the process, when one is meditating, I mean, I've had this happen numbers of times when people will say, I was home by myself, I was meditating, I was being very calm, and I started to see this face come up in front of my face in the middle of the meditation. Then I suddenly couldn't move. And it's as if, even I think at night sometimes in the dream state, people are fairly vulnerable. I remember a woman talking about a dream. She was having a dream about anything, just a normal dream, and suddenly there's this alien face appears. And she said it was as if the announcer was saying, we interrupt this dream to bring you an abduction experience or something. But I, of course, support every attempt anybody can make to resist this, because the essential thing is we have got to make them understand that they have got to explain themselves and they have got to ask our permission before they do this. I mean, two basic, simple human rights. We want to understand what they need from us. Almost every abductee I've ever worked with has said to me, if they would sit me down and say, we need this, we need that, we need ova cells or sperm cells, we're trying to do that, we have this problem. The abductees will say, well, I'd say, fine, maybe I'll help you out, sure. You know, but at least explain it and then ask my permission. And what everyone objects to, everyone really, is this idea that they do it when they want to, whatever's happening in your life. And of course, if they take you in the middle of the night and you're gone for 3 hours and you have, the next morning you have an important appointment or a test, and you wake up and you're groggy and confused, you know, it's, don't take me now, I'm not ready for this, you know, but there's no choice. And I think that I applaud anyone who can try to resist, who can try to say, don't take me, without asking permission and explaining yourselves.